You must read the newly flourishing political and human geography in the Middle East and understand that it will no longer be possible to carry on in an environment of continuous strife and conflict.
You can see all of the Turkish Prime Minister's UN speech at cspan.org. The House is coming back in now to debate another temporary federal spending bill for fiscal year 2012.
Amendment to the bill, H.R. 2608, to provide for an additional temporary extension of programs under the Small Business Act and the Small Business Investment Act of 1958 and for other purposes.
Referred to the House calendar and ordered printed. For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Speaker, I sent to the desk a privilege. No, I just did that. Mr. Speaker, by the direction of the Committee on Rules, I call up House Resolution 412 and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the resolution.
House Calendar number 76, House Resolution 412. Resolved that upon adoption of this resolution, it shall be in order to take from the Speaker's table the bill, H.R. 2608, to provide for an additional temporary extension of programs under the Small Business Act and the Small Business Investment Act of 1958 and for other purposes, with the Senate amendment thereto, and to consider in the House, without intervention of any point of order, a motion offered by the Chair of the Committee on Appropriations or his designee, that the House concur in the Senate amendment with the amendment printed in Part A of the report of the Committee on Rules accompanying this resolution modified by the amendment printed in Part B of such report. The Senate amendment and the motion shall be considered as read. The motion shall be debatable for 1 hour equally divided and controlled by the Chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Appropriations. The previous question shall be considered as ordered on the motion to its adoption without intervening motion.
The gentleman from California is recognized for 1 hour.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. For the purpose of debate only, I yield the customary 30 minutes to my very good friend from Rochester, New York, the distinguished ranking minority member of the Committee on Rules, Ms. Slaughter, pending which I yield myself such time as I might consume and ask unanimous consent to revise
without
objection my
objection.
remarks. All time that I'll be yielding and that my friend from Rochester will be yielding will be for debate purposes only, and I'd ask unanimous consent, Mr. Speaker, that all members have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks on the motion before us. Speaker, we have gone through what James Madison, the author of the Constitution, described as an ugly, messy, difficult process. That's the legislative process. And while many of us have been frustrated, it does work at the end of the day. And, Mr. Speaker, it has to work. It has to work because our fellow Americans are suffering at this moment. Just been talking to staff members of the House Appropriations Committee, and we have to get the resources to those people who are suffering ASAP. As of this morning, there was a grand total of $212 million in the Federal Emergency Management Agency's fund to deal with these disasters that have taken place. Last spring, the Secretary of Homeland Security, Ms. Napolitano, testified that we needed additional resources. Now, Mr. Speaker, let's go back to last spring and realize that that was before we had hurricanes, it was before we had floods, it was before we had tornadoes that hit the Midwest. I think of those poor people in Joplin, Missouri, and all those homes and lives that were lost. And it was before we had this earthquake that, as we all know, damaged the Washington Monument right down the street from where we are. Mr. Speaker, it's very important that we get those resources there. With only $212 million as of this morning, with expenditures somewhere in the neighborhood of $30+ million a day, it means that as early as Monday of next week, we could end up with nothing for those people who are suffering. Mr. Speaker, we don't want the government to shut down. We want to make sure that the people who are truly in need are able to have the resources necessary. But at the same time, we recognize that we have a $14.5 trillion national debt. We have massive deficits that are before us, and we need to do everything that we can to do what people across this country are saying needs to be done. We need to create jobs. We need to generate an increase in our gross domestic product growth. And the measure that is going to be before us when we report out this rule will do just that. Now, Mr. Speaker, the measure that we will consider is identical to the measure that we considered in the House yesterday. It's a measure that was had been reported out, basically the same package that we had last week, but a bipartisan request that was made by the Senate Majority Leader, Mr. Reid, Senate Minority Leader, Mr. McConnell, was that we have this provision considered as a Senate amendment so that the Senate would be able to move as quickly as possible to ensure that our fellow Americans have the resources that are necessary. And so that's why we have ended up with the same measure that we had yesterday. But, Mr. Speaker, as you and I have discussed in a meeting that we were just in, there has been a change. There's a very minor change. It is one single paragraph, and if somebody will give it to me here, I'll read that one paragraph. So of the continuing resolution that we had, which is $1,043 billion, exactly what we had yesterday, no change, in full compliance with the 3-day layover requirement that exists in the House rules. And I will remind my colleagues that the measure that's before us was put online on Monday, 4 days ago, so again in full compliance with time to spare for the 3-day layover, to meet the 3-day layover, with one amendment. And the amendment reads as follows: at the end of the matter proposed to be inserted by the House amendment, before the short title, insert the following: Section 142, effective on the date of the enactment of this Act, of the unobligated balances remaining available for Department of Energy, energy programs, Title 17 Innovative Technology Loan Guarantee Program, pursuant to Title 4 of Division A of Public Law 111-5, $100 million is rescinded. That is the only change that has been made. And let me tell you why that change was made, Mr. Speaker. And I don't often read the Washington Post on the House floor, but today's Washington Post has an article that explains what it is that led us to call for using the $100 billion that I just mentioned as an offset. And I recognize, as one of my colleagues in the Rules Committee stated earlier, we know that this company known as Solyndra, which Democrats and Republicans alike have recognized has been an abject failure for this energy program, is one that will not get resources because they have gone bankrupt. But let me just tell you what led to us focusing on this $100 million, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that we never again have another boondoggle like Solyndra. This is again today's Washington Post, and it reads as follows in an article entitled, Solyndra Employees, Company Suffered from Mismanagement, Heavy Spending. It says, former employees of Solyndra, the shuttered solar company that exhausted $500 million of taxpayer money, said they saw questionable spending by management almost as soon as a federal agency approved a $535 million government-backed loan for the startup. A new factory built with public money boasted a gleaming conference room with glass walls that, with a flip of a switch, turned a smoky gray to conceal the room's occupants. Hastily purchased state-of-the-art equipment ended up being sold for pennies on the dollar, still in its plastic wrap, employees said. As the $344 million factory went up just down the road from the company's leased plant in Fremont, California, workers watched as pallets of unsold solar panels stacked up in storage. Many wondered, was the factory needed? After we got the loan guarantee, they were just spending money left and right, said former Solyndra engineer Lindsay Eastburn. Because we were doing well, nobody cared. Because of that infusion of money, it made people sloppy. Now, Mr. Speaker, we all know that our fellow Americans are suffering across this country because of the tremendous, very, very sad disasters that we have faced over the past weeks and months. And it is very important for us to recognize that every taxpayer dollar is precious, especially in these times when there are people losing jobs, losing their homes, and losing their businesses. This is a very sad and tragic example of the kind of waste that is there, and that is why the one very small but important modification to the measure that is before us will be to take $100 million and use that additionally as an offset to ensure that the hard-earned dollars of the American people are not wasted in the way that we have seen. So, Mr. Speaker, I urge my colleagues to support this rule, and with that reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves his time. Gentlelady from New York.
Very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague for yielding me the customary 30 minutes, and I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my speech today will be very much like my speech yesterday, but then so is the bill. Yesterday, the House, on both sides of the aisle, defeated the majority's first attempt to pass a continuing resolution, and here we are 24 hours later with the very same bill. Let me repeat, the bill we're debating today has barely changed from the one that was defeated yesterday. The bill still contains unacceptable cuts to an essential manufacturing jobs program to pay for equally essential disaster relief. Homes have been destroyed, roads have collapsed, and local economies have been disrupted by a seemingly endless string of hurricanes, tornadoes, tropical storms, extreme weather that has crisscrossed our land. Our moral compass makes it very clear. We know what we need to do. We must come to the aid of our fellow Americans who need our help. The problems they are facing are monumental, and quite simply, no one can recover from such natural disasters on their own. They need our help. Yet the majority's effort to hold disaster relief hostage to unacceptable cuts is as unwise today as it was 24 hours ago. As I said yesterday, when it comes to spending billions of dollars on two wars that are bankrupting us, the majority's concern for spending is nowhere to be found. Since 2004, American taxpayers have spent over $3.4 billion as emergency spending on infrastructure in Afghanistan and even more in Iraq. Not a single one of these $3.4 billion was offset, but were paid for by the same taxpayers that are being denied taxpayer money now. While we send billions of dollars to Iraq, the Iraqi government has begun building, they announced today, a high-speed rail system to connect Bosnia to Baghdad. That's the same week that the majority in this House took all the high-speed rail away from the United States. And so we will be paying for 280 miles in Iraq, but we can't pay for it from Buffalo to Albany. When it comes to Americans in need, when it comes to helping women, children, and families whose homes have been washed away, the majority's decided they just can't help unless they get to take the money from a program that has created 39,000 jobs and poised to create 60,000 more. The bill was wrong yesterday. The bill is wrong today. Let me just give you some information that we've gotten from, I believe, the New York Times. The headline says, Republicans sought clean energy money for home states. Senator McConnell asked for $253 million for an electric vehicle plant in Kentucky. Representative Lamar Smith asked stimulus money for a solar plant in Texas. Congressman Fred Upton wanted 5 clean energy projects in Michigan. Representative Cliff Stearns asked for a lithium-ion battery manufacturing plant in Florida. These requests for funding came from the very same program that have been discussed being cut these last 2 days. I ask unanimous consent to insert this in the record.
Without objection.
I urge all of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to stand by your beliefs. If you thought the bill was wrong yesterday, there is no reason to think the bill is better today. Virtually nothing has changed. I urge my colleagues to oppose this rule and this flawed bill and I reserve the balance of my time.
The lady reserves her time. The gentleman from California.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I might consume to simply say that when Ms. Pelosi was Speaker of the House of Representatives, my friend from Rochester chaired the Rules Committee, the disaster relief provided in the response to Hurricane Katrina was partially offset. This is not in any way unprecedented. It's the right thing to do. I urge my colleagues to support the rule and with that reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves his time. The gentlelady from New York.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Massachusetts, a member of the Committee on Rules, Mr. McGovern.
Gentleman from Massachusetts recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This House is badly broken. This Republican leadership is out of touch. This process is a disgrace. This is not the way the people's business is supposed to work. We are now debating a continuing resolution that has the same objectionable provisions that were rejected yesterday on a bipartisan basis. Plus, it has additional provisions that cut jobs. It's even worse. So, you know, here's the deal. What's objectionable to people like me is that my Republican friends continue to insist on cutting programs that will result in the elimination of American jobs. Their view is simple. If we want to help victims of tornadoes and hurricanes, then we have to pay for it, and we pay for it, in their view, by cutting jobs, not tax cuts for millionaires, not subsidies for big oil, not cutting incentives that encourage sending American jobs overseas. What they're advocating is cutting American jobs. Mr. Speaker, the Republican leadership, in my opinion, doesn't have a clue. They are obsessed with cutting government at all costs, including programs that help sustain American jobs, including programs that help prevent the elimination of American jobs. And here's the deal. The issue is jobs. You know, they may not want to hear it, but the central issue before our country is jobs. I don't care where you go in this country, what people want to talk about is jobs and the creation of jobs as a way to secure our economy. What we should be talking about on the House floor tonight is jobs. What we should be talking about on the House floor tomorrow is jobs. What we should be talking about every day until the American people are back to work is jobs. Instead, under this Republican leadership, we're debating trivial issues passionately and important ones not at all. I urge my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to, at a minimum, allow Democrats to bring up the President's jobs bill so that we can put people back to work. You know, the best way to reduce the debt in this country is to put people back to work. You know, even a slight drop in the unemployment rate in this country would result in an incredible reduction in our debt. So I urge my colleagues to reject this continuing resolution because it is about eliminating jobs. It's not about creating more jobs. It's about eliminating jobs. Reject this continuing resolution because it plays politics with the lives of American citizens who have been victimized by natural disasters. I urge the Republican leadership to, at least in this one instance, to try to be bipartisan. We talk about an open house. We talk about bipartisanship. Here's an opportunity for us to be bipartisan. Let's work together on behalf of the American people. Let's get this bill right, and let's focus on jobs. That's what the American people want. This bill falls far short of that. Thank you.
Gentleman's time's expired. The gentleman from California.
Time as might consume to tell my friend from Worcester that clearly jobs is the priority that we are focused on. I appreciate very much and I'd like to associate myself with his remarks when he talked about the need for us to focus on job creation and economic growth. And I know I'm speaking for everyone on our side of the aisle when we say that we want to work in a bipartisan way to ensure that we can get our economy growing and so that the American people who are hurting will be able to have job opportunities. With that, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves his time. The gentlelady from New York.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 5 minutes to the gentleman from Massachusetts, a distinguished ranking member of the Committee on Natural Resources. This combines a speech he would have made yesterday with one he's going to do this evening. Thank you, Mr.
Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized for 5 minutes.
I thank the gentlelady. Write today's date down. September 22nd, 2011. The Republicans are now in open warfare against clean energy. Yesterday was an opening salvo, but today is the declaration of war. They've already gutted clean energy research and development budgets by 40% for next year. Their budget for the next 3 years promises to cut those investments by 90%. They've zeroed out loan guarantee programs for all renewable energy in their budget, while leaving intact $25 billion for the nuclear industry. They're prepared to shut down the government rather than rescind 1 penny of the oil and gas industry's $41 billion in tax subsidies. But clean energy sector gets the hammer. Yesterday, in a gratuitous assist to big oil, Republicans tried to kill the Clean Car Factory Fund in order to pay for natural disaster relief. This is the program that is helping American companies manufacture super-efficient vehicles that reduce our dangerous dependence on foreign oil from OPEC. But apparently, that bill wasn't radical enough for the Tea Party base. So tonight, they come back, and they're launching their full frontal assault on clean energy. Yesterday, it was just clean cars. Today, it's solar energy, wind energy, all renewables. Tonight, they take out the full assault attack. But a word of warning, up to a dozen projects are prepared to receive the green light in the next week. Swooping in and destroying this program now will destroy these projects and destroy the thousands of jobs that will come with them. So before you vote for this bill, check and see if your state is one of the 38 that has received support under this program. Check and see if your state is one of the 12 that could have a new project announced next week. Make sure that the 66,000 people that have jobs today as a result of this program are not from your state. And by the way, those 66,000 jobs created through this program are far more than any jobs created through legislation passed out in the first 9 months that the Republicans have controlled the United States House of Representatives. So our planet is warming. Extreme weather is increasing. 100-year floods and droughts are now striking every few years. Hurricanes causing floods, massive power outages and deaths. Texas has been on fire after having the hottest summer ever recorded. The President has issued disaster relief declarations in 48 states so far this year. 83 major disasters declared in 2011. The all-time record, 3 more months to go this year. Wake up! Wake up! You can't kill these programs. This is the solution you are killing. Republicans say, fine, we'll provide emergency relief for those who have been afflicted by this nature's wrath in an ever-warming planet, but we won't do it unless we can cut the funds for the programs that promise to be the solution to the problem. That's what they're proposing here tonight. Does the majority ask if we can save money by cutting the hundreds of billions of dollars we are planning on spending, the Republicans are planning on spending on new nuclear weapons being constructed over the next 10 years when we don't need any more nuclear weapons? No. Can we cut the tens of billions of dollars in taxpayer subsidies we give to big oil and king coal? Of course not. But wind, solar, clean cars, all-electric vehicles, plug-in hybrids. Oh, yeah, let's cut that program tonight to fund disaster relief for people in this country suffering from weather, from floods, from hurricanes, from tornadoes caused by an ever-changing climate. This bill is an embarrassment. This is not worthy of this Congress. Vote no on this latest assault on the Republican plan to kill the clean energy industry in this country on behalf of the big oil and big coal industry.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman
Speaker, I yield myself to I might consume to say to my friend that there have been 1,100 jobs lost at Solyndra. We want to make sure that there is never again another Solyndra. That's the reason that we have focused on the $100 million as an offset in this measure, Mr. Speaker. And I think it's also very important to note, this morning when I woke up, I heard the news that General Motors is now in the midst of an international partnership in the People's Republic of China to deal with the development of electric vehicles. These are the kinds of things that the private marketplace is pursuing. I live in Los Angeles, California, where we have very serious air quality problems, and we just got the news today that Washington, D.C. is number 6 in the nation when it comes to air quality problems. We want to make sure that we have energy-efficient automobiles. We are determined to do that. We need to make sure that those companies that are out there pursuing these kinds of alternatives, that frankly, in most all cases, are free of government grants, are able to succeed with that. And that's why we have proceeded with that. If my friend would like me to yield, I'm happy to yield to him.
I thank the gentleman. I'm glad you brought out the General Motors deal, because the General Motors deal is only possible because of the grants and the loans that have been given for the batteries or the new technologies under these programs that are now making it possible for General Motors to reinvent.
If I could reclaim my time, Mr. Speaker, let me say to my friend that obviously we have seen the General Motors deal proceed. The fact of the matter is, it's not solely because of that we are seeing this kind of partnership. But, Mr. Speaker, we are seeing the private sector proceed with a policy that I believe very strongly in. And that policy is being pro-environment is, in fact, pro-business. And with that, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentlelady from New York.
I'm going to yield myself a minute to respond to the General Motors China issue.
Week ago,
this week, earlier, the New York Times had a wonderful article in the business section that the Chinese were subsidizing electric cars to the tune of $19,000, which all of us know is against every trade law the world has ever seen. But they were going to sell the Volt, and GM announced, they actually told on them, that in order to sell the Volt at all in China, they had to give over all of their technology and all the information they had on how to build that car. I thought they weren't going to do it, but I also read yesterday that now they've got a brand new Chinese partner, and they're giving them all the technology. I've got some legislation to bring into that, Mr. Bass. I think it's outrageous, Mr. Speaker, that that's what's happening to American manufacturers.
Gentlelady reserves her time. The gentleman from California.
Yes,
Gentlelady from New York.
I would like to yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Michigan, who knows the thing about General Motors, the distinguished ranking member of the Committee on Ways and Means.
Gentleman from Michigan is recognized for 3 minutes, without objection.
Well, here we go again. You tried to cut jobs last night. You lost. Now you're trying it again. When Americans need jobs, the Republicans are pushing an anti-jobs bill. Here's what the NAM said about this program that you want to curtail. I quote, "The ATVM program is an example of what government-industry partnerships can accomplish. It has helped create and preserve thousands of auto sector jobs. The NAM believes defunding ATVM will hurt manufacturers and their employees," end of quotes. So you listen to nobody except your empty rhetoric, and I think dangerous action. So if that wasn't enough, here's what the Chamber of Commerce said, I quote, "The ATVM program promotes manufacturing in the U.S. and is an important component of American energy security." Well, so yesterday, the chairman of the Appropriations Committee, we sent him the letter, says that the ATVM loan program is, I quote, "a government subsidy for failing industries," end of quote. GM failing? Chrysler failing? Ford failing? How misguided. Well, now you're on your rampage to kill jobs, and you propose to cut another program, Section 1705, the loan program to help investments in new energy technology. This is a dangerous precedent. It's also, let's be frank, a dangerous smokescreen so some Republicans can change their votes. That's what this is all about. Well, you don't want to listen to Warren Buffett on taxes, and now you're thumbing your vote at Bill Gates. They issued a report yesterday, Bill Gates and a number of other technology leaders, and I quote from the report about energy and programs like what you're trying to cut. I quote, "If the U.S. fails to invent new technologies and create new markets and new jobs that will drive the transformation and revitalization of the $5 trillion global energy industry," I ask for an additional minute.
1 minute.
We will have lost an opportunity to lead in what is arguably the largest and most pervasive technology sector in the world. However, if the U.S. successfully innovates in clean energy, our country stands to reap enormous benefits. And then it goes on. Unfortunately, the country has yet to embark on a clean energy innovation program commensurate with the scale of national priorities that are at stake. In fact, and I interpolate here, this is what you're doing. Rather than improve the country's energy innovation program and invest in strategic national interests, the current political environment is creating strong pressure to pull back from such efforts, end of quotes. That's exactly what you're doing today. This bill is dangerous mindlessness.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from California.
Speaker, I yield myself such time as I might consume to simply remind my colleagues why it is that we're here. We're faced with the prospect of a government shutdown. There is a grand total, as of this morning, of $212 million in the fund to deal with our fellow Americans who are suffering because of disasters that we've gone through over the past several weeks and months. And we want to make sure that the appropriations process, which has been dumped on us, is able to be addressed in a bipartisan way. I want Democrats and Republicans alike to come together to address this. The $100 million additional offset, the only minor modification that has been made, is to ensure that we don't have what I know Democrats and Republicans alike agree on. We don't want to have another Solyndra, and that's what we believe we can do. With that, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves his time. The gentlelady from New York.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Andrews.
The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized for 3 minutes. Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank my friend for yielding. Tomorrow will be yet another Friday without a paycheck for too many Americans. For many Americans, this may be the week that their unemployment benefits finally run out and they have no income left whatsoever. For many Americans, this might be the last weekend they spend in their home because the eviction notice or the foreclosure process comes due next week. There has been a natural disaster this summer in America, but there's been an economic disaster in America for a very long time. 15 days ago, the President of the United States came to this chamber and in good faith laid out a plan to put Americans back to work. In those 15 days, this majority has had no hearings, no discussions, and no votes on the President's plan to put the country back to work. Until today, it was accurate to say they'd done nothing about the job situation in America. Today, they've done something. They put forward a bill that destroys a program that's created 39,000 jobs in the private sector. My friend from California talked about the new deal that GM may strike to build the new generation of cars in China. With all due respect, that's the point. The purpose of this program is to make sure that the next generation of cars is built by Americans and sold to Chinese, not built by Chinese and sold to Americans. So if we let this bill pass, we are waving the white flag of surrender on the next generation of vehicles. Now, they say, well, we have to do this because we have to provide disaster relief. I think there's unanimity in this chamber that the victims of floods and hurricanes and other crises deserve help. But the artificial excuse that's being used here is, well, we have to pay for the help. I have a suggestion. We're going to spend in the next 10 days in Iraq and Afghanistan what it would cost to deal with this disaster relief. How about that? Instead of crushing American jobs here at home, why don't we do the intelligent thing and say to the Iraqis and the Afghans it's time they ran their own country with their own money? How about that for an offset? We should never have to choose between employing our neighbors and ignoring their needs. The right vote here is no. Let's bring back to the floor tomorrow a plan that both sides can support, that keeps Americans working, puts Americans back to work, and solves this disaster problem. Vote no, and then let's fix the problem. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from California.
Speaker, I yield my substance as I might consume to simply say that job creation and economic growth is what we are all about. The deal about which my friend just referred is one which is part of the global marketplace. The goal of having U.S. manufacturers, U.S. workers manufacturing automobiles for sale in China and vice versa is our priority. And with that, I'd like to yield 2 minutes to my friend from Lawrenceville. I will in just a moment, but I just told my friend from Lawrenceville I'd like to yield 2 minutes, and then I'd love to engage.
Gentleman from Georgia is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank my chairman for yielding. I appreciate the time, because as we talk about the President's jobs bill, I was here, too, when the President came to present his ideas, and it kind of excited me, because as I look at where the President began on some of these jobs issues, and I looked at what has been proposed in this House already on these jobs issues, I realized exactly how much progress we were able to make. I think about the President's proposal to eliminate oil company subsidies, a proposal that I support. In fact, I have a bill that not just eliminates oil company subsidies, but all industrial subsidies, so that we can let the free market drive that train and create those jobs anew. I think about the President's proposal to curtail the payroll tax, and I think we already have a proposal that does not only curtails the payroll tax to the small degree the President recommends, but actually, since it's the largest tax that 80% of American taxpayers pay, eliminate it entirely. And not only do we have that, I'm limited to only 2 minutes. If my friend from New York would like to yield me time, I would be happy to yield that back. But I just want to say, and as my friend from the Ways and Means Committee knows, not only do we have that proposal introduced here, it's H.R. 25, the fair tax, we've had hearings on it in the Ways and Means Committee. So I say to my friend from New Jersey, we are moving forward. We are moving forward on those agendas. But let me just talk about why we're here tonight. We're here. If I could get some time from my friend from New York, I'd love to agree with you. I wanted to tell you how much I believe we're headed on the same track. But let me talk about this continuing resolution, because that's really why we're here, despite the fact that folks bring up where we are on the President's jobs bill. This is about getting disaster relief to families that need it. And, you know, we could have gotten it done yesterday and should have gotten it done yesterday. And even though I'm new at this process, I actually thought we had an agreement to get it done yesterday. I thought we had an agreement because it was the right thing to do to get it done yesterday. Now, only folks who are more privy than I know why that agreement came unglued and why it was we didn't get it done. But we're back here tonight, and we have that opportunity. Please, please, let's get it done for those folks who need it. The time for games has long since passed. And I thank my chairman for yielding.
Gentlelady from New York.
Let me take 30 seconds to respond to my friend from Georgia. Don't forget that 48 on your side voted against it.
Well, the gentlelady...
So I don't know what agreement you had with them.
Well, and
I would be happy to yield to Mr. Andrews.
I did want to ask my friend from Georgia a question, Mr. Speaker, if I might.
Gentleman is recognized.
On the right track. Will the gentleman agree that we should have an up-down vote on the President's jobs plan on this floor?
I actually don't like those kind of long, complicated bills, I would say to my friend. But should we vote on his ideas one idea at the time? I say that regularly. Had we voted on the President's health care bill one idea at the time, America would have loved 80% of it.
Reclaiming my time, is that a yes or a no?
That's a let's vote on it one idea at the time. Not just his ideas, but all of our ideas.
Reclaiming my time, will the gentleman vote for the President's tax cuts for small businesses that create jobs if they hire someone?
The tax proposal I'm familiar with is a $1.5 trillion tax increase bill.
No, no.
Is there a different...
Reclaiming my time. The President's plan was a small business that creates jobs to get a tax cut. Will you vote for that?
If he wants to reduce the highest corporate tax rate in the world, I am a huge supporter of that.
Reclaiming my time, is that a yes or a no on that idea?
I will vote for any reduction in corporate rates that the President proposes.
Does reclaim my time, was the gentleman favor the provision that says we should put teachers who've been laid off back in the classroom? I would yield.
I absolutely do, and with state and local funds, we're doing that today. I hope we'll continue to do that.
Reclaim my time. Would the gentleman agree, though, we should use some federal funds for that purpose?
I do not believe the federal government should be involved in education.
I yield back. I disagree.
I thank my friend.
Does the gentlelady from New York seek to yield time?
Apparently I don't. We were expecting
gentleman
another
from
speaker,
California?
but not yet on the floor. So I'll reserve until...
Gentlelady reserves. The gentleman
Mr. Speaker, I'm prepared to close on our side. If my friend is prepared to close, then we can close the debate here and move to a vote on the rule, and then move directly for consideration of the appropriations bill so that the American people will be closer to getting the resources they desperately need.
The gentlelady from New York.
I thought the
I
gentleman was
appreciate,
going to
Mr.
close.
Speaker. My speaker has arrived. It's Mr. Crowley of New York, and we will yield to him 3 minutes.
Gentleman from New York is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to this bill. I'm not opposed to keeping our government up and running. In fact, I want desperately to support a bill as simple as keeping the federal government up and running. What I'm opposed to is, I believe, an ugly, outright partisan politics, especially at a time when Americans want to work constructively together to address the serious problems that we are all facing. But bipartisanship is not at work here tonight, and it has not been here for some time. Since President Obama announced the Americans Job Act, my colleagues on the other side have held 0 hearings, not a single hearing on that plan. Since Solyndra announced it was going out of business, the majority has held 3 hearings, and there are more scheduled to come. Let's be clear. We should get all the answers, every answer about Solyndra's failings. But I'm sorry, that is not a comprehensive agenda that will produce one single job. Time is ticking. Because while we stand here tonight quibbling about how to pay for the day-to-day functions of government and how to best to assist American communities hurting after hurricanes, flooding, droughts, and wildfires, Europe and China are working overtime to outcompete us on every front. President Obama and the Democratic Party have a plan for keeping the U.S. competitive on the global stage. We have a plan for keeping American businesses, workers, and industry stronger and better than our foreign competitors. It's Democrats who got engaged and saved GM and Chrysler. It's Democrats who created the Advanced Technology Vehicle Manufacturing Loan Program, a program that has created almost 40,000 auto manufacturing jobs in less than 2 years. And it's Democrats who have led the way on green energy. By contrast, the GOP agenda can be summed up in one word: roadblock. Not road building, roadblock. Republicans aren't focused on producing jobs. They oppose trying to put Detroit back on its feet. They are opposed to bringing President Obama's bill to the floor. And the very bill we are debating right now, they are making cuts to the very manufacturing program I just cited as a job creator. My colleagues, there are Americans across the country who are hurting. They've lost jobs, been foreclosed upon, and have endured extreme natural disasters of all kinds. They cannot accept a Congress that isn't willing to put them first. They cannot accept a Congress that insists upon offsets for aid to rebuild America, but not for aid to rebuild schools, hospitals, and roads in Iraq and Afghanistan. They cannot accept a Congress that holds more hearings on the failure of one company, but not one hearing on a job plan for America. I'm sorry, but this is not acceptable. Vote no on this bill and reject the GOP's roadblock agenda. And I yield back to the
Gentleman's expired. Gentleman from California.
Speaker, I'm prepared to close the debate on our side. I know my friend was
gentlelady from New York.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to yield a minute to the gentlelady from Ohio, Ms. Casper.
Gentlelady from Ohio is recognized for 1 minute.
I thank the ranking member, Ms. Slaughter of New York, for granting me this time to say, you know, I really didn't believe it when someone suggested to me that the Republican Party would really like to defeat President Obama by raising the unemployment rate. I thought that's too cynical to really believe. But in this particular proposal tonight, what we see is a proposal by the Republican Party to take money from the Advanced Technology Vehicle Manufacturing Program to help America compete with state-managed economies like China and Japan, and take it away from them to try to give to disaster victims around this country. It's a no-win game. We're hurting the American people. In the greatest automotive manufacturing country in the world, we don't want to put people back to work because we want to defeat the president next year. I'm starting to believe those that suggested this cynical ploy. Why should we hurt the automotive industry that is just beginning to hire back and starting to lift this economy in the industrial Midwest and from parts suppliers coast to coast? Vote no on this cynical ploy to set disaster victims against unemployed auto workers in the automotive industry of this country, which has a right to compete. I yield back my remaining time.
Gentlelady from New York.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to yield 1 minute to the gentlewoman from California, our Democrat leader, Ms. Pelosi.
Gentlelady from California is recognized.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the gentlelady for yielding, and I commend her for her enormous leadership, patience, and great intellect that she brings to bear on these issues. And listening to the debate, it's really almost hard to explain to someone why we're coming back tonight with the same old, warmed-over stew that was rejected yesterday by the Congress of the United States. But since then, we've had some support expressed for the initiative that is contained in this bill and against the notion that our Republican colleagues have that it's a good idea to use this as a pay-for. I take particular pride in this provision that the Republicans are trying to zero out in this bill, the Advanced Technology Vehicle Manufacturing Program. You will recall, Mr. Dreyer, that it was part of a bill that was passed when President Bush was president. It was the Energy Independence and Security Act of 2007. It was a bill that passed the Congress with strong bipartisan support, including your support, Mr. Dreyer. In fact, 95 Republicans voted for the bill. It was an even split in the Republican caucus, 95-4, 96 against. But you recall voting for that.
Woman yield?
No, I'm sorry, because you have like a half an hour and I just don't.
I've been mentioned 3 times, Mr. Speaker. I've been mentioned 3 times, and since the gentleman has mentioned me,
the gentlelady from California controls the time.
Order in the House, Mr. Speaker. The gentleman has all the time. For some reason, the Republicans are not showing their faces on the floor on this amendment, so he has plenty of time on this bill, plenty of time to speak. If he didn't, I'd be more than happy to yield to him. But since he has so much time on his own, he can use that. In any event, here's the thing. We have an initiative that is bipartisan. We have an initiative that has passed the House in overwhelming numbers, 314 to 100. 314 to 100. It passed the House. After coming back from the Senate. Yesterday, there was an attempt made to use the funds allocated to the Advanced Technology Vehicle Manufacturing Program to offset the disaster assistance. I myself have believe it is a matter of principle that we should just do with disaster assistance what we always have done. Have no doubt in anyone's mind that when a natural disaster strikes, the federal government will be there. FEMA will be funded, and that we don't have to look around for a place to say, let's prioritize. No, the disaster assistance is our priority. But on top of that, they use as a pay-for, again, zeroing out the Advanced Technology Vehicle Manufacturing. I don't want you to take my words for the merit of this initiative. I want to enter into a record the letter from the National Association of Manufacturers,
and the United States of America Chamber of Commerce.
Without objection.
Thank you. As Congress sets spending priorities, the Chamber wishes to highlight a few important facts about the Advanced Technology Vehicle Manufacturing Loan Program. This is from the Chamber of Commerce. First, the program was authorized in Energy Independence Security Act of 2007, which was supported by both Democrats and Republicans as an important step in reducing America's dependence on oil from unstable regimes. Second, ATM-VM loans, which will be repaid with interest, incentivized automakers and suppliers to build more fuel-efficient advanced technology vehicles in the United States, providing opportunities for American workers in a sector of the economy that is critical to the nation's recovery. And then he goes on to say that this is funded by the Department of Education, and it's not the fault of industry if these funds have not been used. In the NAM, in the National Association of Manufacturers, they say similarly, we express our support for the Advanced Technology Vehicle Manufacturing Program authorized under the Energy Independence and Security Act of 2007 with bipartisan support and signed into law by President Bush. It was a very proud day for us when President Bush signed this bill. It made tremendous advances in energy efficiency and conservation. It was a great accomplishment of the Bush administration and a Democratic Congress working together, but the bill passed in strong bipartisan fashion. Now, just mentioning that it was signed by President Bush. The ATVM program is an example of what government-industry partnerships can accomplish. It has helped create and preserve thousands of auto sector jobs and put our nation on a path toward greater energy security. The National Association of Manufacturers believes defunding ATVM will hurt manufacturers and their employees. I'll submit the rest of the letters for the record so members can read further for themselves in the congressional record, and for all who view the work of Congress. They can see the importance of these initiatives, first by the strong bipartisan support that they received in a democratically controlled Congress, but signed by a Republican president, President Bush. A very major accomplishment, I think he believes. The second point, though, is that, again, American people are looking for ways for us to create jobs. The Republicans have been in power in this Congress and this House of Representatives for over 250 days. They have not passed one bill into law which is a job creator, and today they come back to the floor a second day in a row with a job destroyer. The repetition of it is almost frivolous when you think that what we could be talking about here is a clean, continuing resolution, a clean CR, a clean, continuing resolution that will meet our needs to the November 18th. Is that it, Mr. Chairman? And then, and I thank Chairman Dix for his leadership on this important issue, Mr. Levin, certainly Mr. Dingell, who was a champion of this initiative from day one, and a leader in the fight to preserve it here. It could just have been so simple. Let's just keep government open until November 18th with a clean, continuing resolution, instead of coming to the floor and for the first time. Now, my colleagues will say, oh, well, we've had other emergencies that were funded. I'm not talking about emergencies. There are many emergencies. I'm talking about disasters. I'm talking about natural disasters when people's homes are swept away. This isn't political. This is very, very personal. If you've lost your home, your belongings, your livelihood, your business, your sense of community, the character of the area in which you live, as many of our colleagues on both sides of the aisle have done, when you see the nature of the natural disasters, whether it's out-of-control forest fires in Texas, what happened in Joplin, Missouri, which is almost biblical in its proportion, and what happened on the East Coast with earthquake followed by hurricane, followed by tornado, followed by floods, and all that goes with it. You think people think that we have any relevance to their lives if we're talking about something like this when all they are saying is help? It's as if a building is on fire and you're going to figure out who's going to pay for the water instead of just running to the rescue. Just running to the rescue. I urge my colleagues to vote no on this and urge my Republican colleagues to please pull this back, bring a clean CR to the floor. Let's get serious about the people's business. With that, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlelady's time has expired. The gentleman from California.
Speaker, I yield myself such time as I let me consume, and I'll be happy to yield to my distinguished California colleague at any moment as I make a couple of remarks here as she walks off the floor. I asked her to yield, Mr. Speaker, because she 3 times referenced me as it relates to the vehicle program, the Advanced Technology Vehicle Program. And let me just explain what we're faced with today, Mr. Speaker. What we're faced with is a challenge of ensuring that we get the resources necessary to the American people who are suffering because of these disasters. Now, when my California colleague was Speaker of the House, we had disasters that took place, like Hurricane Katrina. Much of that was offset, and so to act as if this is unprecedented is not a correct characterization of what has happened, because we have seen offsets for disasters in the past on numerous occasions over the last decade. In excess of $59 billion in offsets have provided for supplemental appropriations that have been out there. As it relates to the Advanced Technology Vehicle Program, I was going to say to my California colleague, who is no longer on the floor, and I'd like to yield to her if she would like to come back to respond to this, there is a total of $4 billion that is there. What we're doing is utilizing $1.5 billion. So as people say that this program is being completely eliminated, that is not a correct characterization of what has happened. Let me tell you what it is that we're doing, Mr. Speaker. We're doing everything that we can to find every dollar that we possibly can to ensure that our fellow Americans who are suffering due to these disasters are able to have the resources that are necessary. Of the $1.5 billion, which is utilized in the offset, it's been sitting in the coffers for 3 years. For 3 years, Mr. Speaker. So to act as if we somehow are going to see some great loss of jobs is, again, a mischaracterization of what is happening. We're establishing priorities. We have a priority, that being dealing with our fellow Americans in Joplin, Missouri, who suffered from that horrible, horrible tornado that hit that area. That's my home state of Missouri, and I know how devastating. And listening to our colleague, Mr. Long, it's very clear to see in his eyes the kind of effort that he's put in to deal with the rebuilding there. That is a priority. Dealing with the photographs that we saw from Mr. Welch's district, who voted for this bill yesterday, and I suspect will vote for it again this evening, to ensure that those who suffered from flooding in Vermont have that. And as I said earlier in the day, our new colleague, Tom Marino from Williamsport, Pennsylvania, who just in the past several days was trudging through the mud, as he reported to my colleagues in our meeting downstairs, talking to the parents of children who were literally sitting on the hoods of their automobiles because their homes have been devastated. And the question asked by that parent to Congressman Marino is, what is it you're going to do? And he said that he would come to Washington and do everything that he possibly can, everything that he would be able to do to ensure that they have the resources they need. Now, to argue that this is pitting a fund that has been sitting dormant for 3 years and is not in the pipeline versus utilization of those resources for the American people who are suffering is a very inappropriate thing to do. So that was the discussion that I was looking forward to having with my California colleague as she talked about my support of the Advanced Technology Vehicle Program. And of course, I'm always happy to yield to my good friend from Detroit.
Look, no one is saying the total program would be obliterated.
Well, if I can reclaim my time, I will tell you what was said. Mr. Speaker, may I reclaim my time? Because the gentleman just said no one is saying that. I'm sure that my friend was not here through the entire debate.
I was.
But, well, I don't know that my friend was listening through the entire debate.
I was.
Well, Mr. Speaker, may I finish, Mr. Speaker? What I want to say is that we were told that we, on our side of the aisle, are declaring war by the statement made by our friends from Massachusetts, and from that, one would have to infer that we were trying to obliterate a program. When we, Mr. Speaker, have 3 years of those dollars sitting dormant, not being expended, and not in the pipeline, we believe that we can utilize those dollars for the American people who are truly in need. We need to move ahead with that as expeditiously as possible, and I think that we should try to do that right now, get to the appropriation bill, and with that I reserve the balance of my time.
You need me 30 seconds.
I'm sorry, Mr. Levin, I don't have any more time. Be prepared to close. Mr. Speaker.
Well, the gentleman, could I ask the gentleman from California, how much time is there on both sides, please?